First of all, let me just say what a blessing it is to be in front of a crowd that's not trying to kill me. Really, to be in front of people who are so passionate about these issues that affect us as Americans, so passionate about America as a whole, it means so much. It's so inspiring to myself to know that we are the majority here. A little bit about me. This past year, first and foremost, I realized the quickest way to make God laugh in your face is to make plans for yourself. I graduated University of Kentucky last year with a degree in human health sciences and health law and had every intent on going into dental school. I actually wanted to pursue endodontics, which is root canals, weirdly enough. Why I wanted to do that, I don't know. But clearly I'm not working on teeth. My life has been totally uprooted from what I thought I was going to do. I realized what a disservice it would be, not only to myself, but to that next generation of female athletes, of females. The past generation of female athletes who fought relentlessly for Title IX, and of course the present female athletes who are silenced amidst all of the craziness that we're dealing with and what that craziness looks like. I started swimming when I was 4 years old. I graduated from the University of Kentucky when I was 22. So I dedicated 18 years of my life to my sport, which of course includes your sport-specific training, but also your weights, your diet, your sleep schedule, your physical rehabilitation, not to mention the social sacrifices. You don't get to go to prom. You don't get to have sleepovers with your friends on Friday nights because you have practice Saturday morning at 6 a.m. You don't get to come home when you're in college for summers or Christmas or Thanksgiving. You're there all year. You get 1 week off in August, and that's it. But I was very fortunate to commit to the University of Kentucky, where I proudly finished my career as a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time, 2-time Olympic trial qualifier, SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year, SEC Community Service Leader of the Year, but really all of that to say that it's a lifelong journey to get to that point. And it really is impossible to put into words the amount of time, again, and the dedication and the sacrifices. But I made it there. I was very blessed. My junior year, I finished 7th in the country. I knew I could do more. That's when I made it my goal to win a national title, which would, of course, mean becoming the fastest female in the country in my respective event. First of all, I want to mention we were partially robbed my collegiate career anyways because we dealt with COVID. My sophomore year, we were geared up, ready to go to our national championships, which is the fastest meet in the world. And about 3 days before we were supposed to leave in March of 2020, America shut down. And so we got sent home, which, as I mentioned, we never got sent home. So when I heard this news we were getting sent home, I was actually kind of excited. Don't tell my coaches. But I knew what this meant. I got to go home. I got to spend time with my family. But this excitement lasted all of 24 hours because I quickly realized I knew we would eventually have to come back, but there was no pools open. There were no gyms open. But I'm very fortunate to be from Tennessee where there's lots of lakes. And so every day I put on a wetsuit and swam miles aimlessly in this lake to continue improving. And that's what I did, and that's when I came back my junior year. This is when I won my first SEC individual title. We won our first SEC championship as a team, and that's when I finished 7th in the country. But as I mentioned, then and there, I knew I could do more, and I set my goal to become a national champion, which would, of course, mean becoming the fastest female in my respective event in the country. And I was right on pace to do that my senior year. About midway through my senior season, I was ranked 3rd in the country, behind one amazing female swimmer who I knew very well, because like in most sports, your top-tier athletes know of each other, regardless of where you compete in the country. And so the girl in 2nd I knew very well. But the person trailing the country by body lengths, I had never heard of before. And this is the first time that I became aware of a swimmer named Lia Thomas. And there was a lot of red flags. This was a senior from University of Pennsylvania, ranking 1st in the 100 freestyle and all of the freestyle events in between to the mile. And if you think about this in terms of your Olympic runners, this is like saying your best 200-meter runner was your best marathon runner, which is, of course, very rare. Well, that doesn't happen. Lots of head scratching. I was talking to my coach, my teammates. We had no idea who this person was. There's this database called USA Swimming where you can look up past times, and I'm looking up Lia Thomas, and nothing pops up until that season. Never once occurred to me this was a male until an article came out disclosing very briefly in a blip of a sentence, as if we were really supposed to just read right over it. Lia Thomas is formerly Will Thomas and swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch to the women's team. And carried on with the article. And I read this, and I was shocked. I was so shocked. My coach was shocked. My teammates were shocked. My parents were shocked. But I really felt relieved because I looked up who Will Thomas was. And I saw that this was a mediocre male swimmer at best, ranking 462nd in the nation among the men. And that's why I say I was relieved, because I thought the NCAA would see this how I saw it, how anyone with a brain would see it. But that is not how the NCAA saw it. They saw absolutely nothing wrong with allowing Lia Thomas to compete with the women. And so I got to personally witness and feel the effect that this infringement, this injustice had on myself and my teammates and my competitors. I can wholeheartedly attest to the tears that I saw from the girls who placed 9th and 17th and missed out on being named an All-American by 1 place. And I can wholeheartedly attest to the extreme discomfort when you turn around in the locker room and there's a 6'4", 22-year-old male disrobing, fully intact with and exposing male genitalia while you're simultaneously undressing. And I can wholeheartedly attest to the talks and the grumbles and the whispers, because that's what they were. They were whispers of anger and frustration from these girls who, just like myself, had worked our entire lives to get to that meet. And so that first day of competition, we watched on the side of the pool as Thomas swam to a national title, beating every female in the country by, again, body lengths. And keep in mind, swimming is a sport that's measured down to the 100th of a second. So to have one person beating everyone in the country by body lengths, that doesn't happen. And also keep in mind, these aren't scrubs. The women that Thomas beat were Olympians, American record holders, the best swimmers, the best female swimmers this nation has ever seen, again, by body lengths. And so that next day of competition was the day that Thomas and I raced. This was the 200 freestyle. If you don't know how swimming works, there's prelims and finals, and we both swam prelims and qualified top 8, and so we came back that night, and almost impossibly enough, we tied. We went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second, which ties are rare when you're racing for 1 minute and 40 seconds to go the exact same time down to the 100th. So you can't look at this situation and tell me God didn't have his hand in it. And so we tied, and we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looks at Thomas and myself, Thomas, who's towering over me at 6'4", me being 5'6". And the official says, "Great job, but you guys tied, and we only have 1 trophy. So we're going to give this trophy to Lia." And so I questioned this, which was the first time anyone questioned anything the NCAA had done up until this point. And I said, "Okay, why? I know we tied, I know there's 1 trophy, but what's your thought process here?" And I actually appreciate his honesty, because he said, "Well, we're just gonna have to give the trophy to Lia because Lia has to hold it for pictures. You can pose with this one, but you have to give it back. You go home empty-handed, Lia takes the trophy home, end of story." And that's ultimately what thrusted me over the edge into really just no longer being willing to lie. Because up until this point, I knew the unfair competition was wrong. Of course I did. I knew the locker room was wrong. But when they reduced everything that we had worked our entire lives for down to a photo op to validate the feelings and the identity of a male at the expense of our own, that's when I was done. Because up until this point, I waited for a coach. I waited for an official. I waited for someone with political power, a parent, another swimmer, someone to say something, someone to stand up for us. But then it slapped me across the face in those moments standing on the podium. Some of you might have seen the picture where we're posing with those little dinky trophies, and I'm glaring at Thomas, and he's just sitting there smiling, of course. How one can be proud of that, I don't know. But in these moments, it slapped me across the face that if we as female athletes weren't willing to stick up for ourselves, we can't expect anyone to stick up for us. So that's what that looked like, and ultimately that's when I think we can all agree swimming is not a sport that garners a lot of media attention, but there was a lot of outlets there, both left-leaning, right-leaning, everything in between, reaching out to us. They would find our name, they would find your social media. My inbox was full of reporters. Everyone was being coached not to respond by our universities, but I did. And I was a lady from the Daily Wire, and that story quickly blew up and turned into Fox and CPAC and being on stage with Trump and a lot of amazing opportunities that I by no means felt equipped for. I still don't feel equipped for. When I did my college speaking classes, your typical comms, public speaking you have to do, my face turned the color of a tomato. And so I'm just learning to roll with the punches, but I've realized when you're so passionate about something, those nerves go out of the window. But I very quickly began to, it was great I was shedding light on these stories, but I began to feel as if I was almost complaining and whining. How could I do something to enact change? And that's when I started traveling state to state, testifying on behalf of this. Hadley mentioned it before this, but now 22 states thus far have passed some sort of fairness in women's sports bill, Colorado not being one of them. This state needs some help. So if there's any legislators in the room, I've been involved in the process in this state through testimony and such, but there's some work that needs to be done here. At the federal level, of course, we have Title IX, that is a federal civil rights law that is supposed to prevent discrimination on the basis of sex. What the administration in the White House is doing right now is actively working to rewrite Title IX to where it's no longer preventing discrimination on the basis of sex, it's preventing discrimination on the basis of gender identity. And so what this means, men could live in dorm rooms with women. Men would have full access to bathrooms, locker rooms, changing spaces. Men could join sororities with women. Men could take academic and athletic scholarships away from women. Under this new rewrite, it's actually sexual harassment. You're charged with sexual harassment if you misgender a trans-identifying individual. So if I were to call Lia Thomas a he, which I do, then I'm guilty of sexual harassment. Not Lia Thomas, who's parading around our locker room exposing male genitalia. Let that sink in. That's what the people leading this country, that's what they think of women. That's the message they send to women, that our privacy, our safety, our fairness, our equal opportunities, our dignity, I could go on. That doesn't matter. We're collateral damage in this process, which is an abomination. I want to briefly touch on the silencing piece, because of course the fairness in women's sports piece is wrong. Obviously it's wrong. It's so blatantly wrong. But the silencing, the freedom of speech issue that is plaguing this country, especially coming from someone who just left a university, it's crazy. I've talked at great lengths with a lot of Lia Thomas's teammates who went through this every day, all year. They were forced to go to mandatory LGBTQ education meetings every week to learn about how just by being cisgender, they were oppressing Lia Thomas. When they sent an email to their administration expressing their discomfort, there were 16 swimmers who signed on and their parents, expressing their discomfort to their administration in the locker room. Their administration responded back with, and I swear I have a screenshot of this, if you feel uncomfortable seeing male genitalia, here's some counseling resources that you need to seek. They were told that they can't take a stance because their school has already taken their stance for them. They were told you will never get a job, you will never get into grad school, you will lose all your friends. You'll lose your scholarship and playing time if you speak out. They were told if you do speak out, and any harm whatsoever comes towards Thomas's way, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, through social media, then you're solely responsible. And you don't want to be solely responsible for someone's harm, do you? Of course not. This is textbook gaslighting. It's emotional blackmail. So it might seem as if I've been some lone face and lone voice fighting for this, fighting for women. But make no mistake, I speak for so many. I speak for so many across the political spectrum. This is not something that should fall on party lines in the manner that it has. In just recent weeks, the U.S. House of Representatives, Representative Greg Steube introduced this, the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. And every single Democrat, every single one, all 203 of them, voted in opposition of protecting women and girls in sports. Every single one. And this was the party that once embraced the feminist movement. They have turned their back on women. And I hope people see that. I hope people see that for what it is. To cater to 0.5% of the population, again, we have become the collateral damage. That's what that looks like. But it's not just the female athletes who are being silenced. It's the coaches. I was nominated for NCAA Woman of the Year, which is the highest collegiate honor for female athletes. It's something that encompasses your academics, your athletics, your service, which are all things I'm very passionate about. But then they released a full list of nominees for NCAA Woman of the Year, to which was not exclusive to just women, because Lia Thomas was nominated. And so they had a big conference, a big convention center. And so I decided to go, which of course I was not going in support. I tried to buy a booth in this convention center, and I applied with my name, denied. I thought maybe something was wrong. I'm offering them $2,000. I tried again, denied. Then I came up with an alias. They very quickly accepted my $2,000. And I got inside this convention center to where athletic directors were walking around. Every single athletic director, I was handing out pamphlets of Title IX. Every single athletic director who walked by said, "Keep going, I support you. Keep fighting." In the first 60, I thought, this is great, until it continued, and I began to feel frustrated. And I started asking them, "That's great that you support this, but would you say so publicly?" "Oh, no, we can't have a lawsuit. You know, I'm the breadwinner for my family. I can't lose my job," and would very quickly turn and walk away. I say that to show the cowardice, to show the lack of a spine, the lack of a backbone that these people have. These people in powerful positions, these Democrats, these are moms and dads. Are you telling me all 203 at the federal level are okay with their daughters undressing next to a fully grown and intact man? And if that answer is truly yes, then there's another conversation that needs to be had, because that's perverse and disgusting. I'll just wrap up with my final thoughts of why. Because as I mentioned, it's a lot bigger than just women's sports. It's happening in prisons, it's happening in sororities and shelters, all over. And it's a systemic erasure of women. So in regards to the denying of objective truth, of biblical truth, of biological reality, the silencing, the changing of the language that we use, notice how in peer-reviewed medical published journals, it's not mother, it's birthing person, birth giver, cervix haver, uterus owner, chest feeder. They refuse to use the term woman. So the changing of the language, the breakdown of family, the breakdown of faith, the breakdown of freedoms, and there's a lot more. The taking of the guns. There's a lot of pieces here that directly point to Marxism. Directly, it's textbook. I wish more people could open their eyes and see this and see how that turns out for any civilization. Open a history book and see how that turns out. And it's not pretty. It's chilling. And again, this is the direction that our administration, the people in charge, are leading us, which is why it's crucial this next cycle we get someone in who will turn this around and put America back on track. But really what I think it is, myself being a Christian, is I see this entirely as spiritual warfare. It's no longer good versus bad or right versus wrong. It's really moral versus evil. And I looked that evil in the eyes when I went to San Francisco State University and I was met with a mob of protesters. And notice how they're the ones who claim to be inclusive and loving and kind and accepting and tolerant and all of those terms. I saw this, and they're none of those things. I was physically attacked, and allow me to reiterate, for simply saying men and women are different. I was physically attacked and held for ransom for over 3.5 hours with law enforcement doing nothing. They demanded I paid them money if I wanted to make it home to see my family again. For 3.5 hours. You know what repercussions have been had since? None. The administrator, the vice president of student affairs of San Francisco State University, actually released an email, sent it out to their student body the day after this. I am so proud of our brave students for handling someone as personally apparent as Riley Gaines, who spread so much violence in the manner that they did. Word for word, what the administration at the university said about this. So I'm not equipped to talk about, a lot of things, but I'm here to share my experience that is so far from unique. There are so many girls, I get messages daily, and I promise you, I really mean that. I wish I had more time. The clock is already, I'm over. But I could list example after example after example of this happening to other girls. That's why it's our jobs as Americans, as Christians, to be bold in the truth, stand firm in the truth. More than anything, that is so important. We've gone so far from that. One last thing very quickly. This conversation very, very naturally and understandably gets centered around girls and women. But men, you are not clear. We need men. We need masculinity. We need that. We've deemed masculinity as toxic or bad or some unadmirable trait. But men need to fulfill their biblical role of protecting and providing. So mothers, defend your daughters and teach your sons masculinity. I so appreciate you guys being here, and I wish I had more time. Thank you.